Yes, sir. So welcome back, and let us go further. This is the last slide. This is the last presentation which we have seen. Idea was very simple that whenever you are learning, let us say the Stark effect, where the external electric field is now perturbing the hydrogen atom or energy levels of hydrogen atom, then how one can actually solve this problem for calculating the second order correction to the ground state energy, this W2 for ground state, that's what we want to calculate. But the direct application of the perturbation theory is prohibitive. It is restricted because of this infinite sum. And therefore, we have now employed the technique proposed by Dalgarno. And what Dalgarno have proposed, that rather than calculating this infinite sum, you can find some operator f such that this operator f will commute with the h dash, the perturbed part of Hamiltonian, and it will also commute with the unperturbed part of Hamiltonian, such that the application of this f can reduce this mathematical labor, and instead of summing it for the infinite number of states, now you have to obtain only one time this matrix element between the product h dash and f. So this part, this h dash f Bray h dash f cat that is the part we need to evaluate. And for that, now we have followed certain procedure. We have gone through this mathematics, and then we look for the what is the effect of this operator f on the ground state hydrogen wave function u100, and that we say can be written as a part which depends on the radial distance r. So we call it as a function f of r, and there is a theta dependency, so that we write as a cos theta. And substituting that, we can evaluate this top equation, and then we just look at the right hand side, that what is there on the right hand side. Based on what we have on a right hand side, we can now construct, we can now design our state function fr. So this fr can be written like that. Out of this fr, if you just look at the sum of the part which I underline with the blue line, this part, blue line part, if I write together, it is nothing but the ground state wave function. So the remaining part is actually the modification to the ground state function of the hydrogen atom U100. And therefore, this is something like your ground state function is slightly modified. So we may call it as a first order state function Vm1. So the effect of this operator f on a ground state function give rise to the first order state function Vm1, and this Vm1 is nothing but this expression, where if I write this blue line part as a U100, then my Vm1 will be written as a electric field strength E upon electronic charge small e, then AR plus half AR square term and cos theta function that multiplies, that is the, you can say, the modification to your U100, that is the ground state wave function. And don't forget, our aim is to obtain this box, our aim is to obtain this ground state energy, which is correction, a second order correction, and therefore we need to obtain this matrix element for h dash f product. Out of that, this fum part together we can write as a Vm1, which we have already obtained. So now in this next slide, we will simply use this expression fully, and we can actually do this integration, we can do this calculation. Don't forget, this in our case, that is nothing but the ground state state function for the hydrogen atom. So that we already have. Vm1 also we have already written. So now we have Vm1, we have and also this h dash, that is the perturbation when the hydrogen atom is placed in uniform electric field, is also known. Correct? So this h dash can be written as minus E R capital E, the electric field strength, into cos theta. So I'm now substituting all this information here. I'm taking this minus sign outside, so minus minus will be plus, small e which is due to the h dash term, and small e which is coming from this Vm1. You don't forget this part, the balloon part where my cursor is moving, Fum is Vm1. So when I put this equation for Vm1, this small e and this small e will cancel out. this half power when multiplies together will give the full power. This cos theta and cos theta, which I have tried to write with a blue underline, that will make cos square theta. This capital E, the strength of electric field, which is a constant term, so I can write it outside. So as this factor 1 upon pi a raised to cube. So all those constant factors I write outside. This exponential term, which was minus r by a, will be as it is. In the next step, that will make element is for the volume integration. So I have to do the integration over r coordinate, theta coordinate, and phi coordinate. We assume this problem in the spherical polar coordinate system. So this is what we have done. And of course, there is no phi part here in the expression. So this d phi will be integrated and will give the value 2 pi. So in the next part, this d phi integration will give you 2 pi. This balloon cos square theta into sine theta d theta, that I can solve using this identity. Beside this, on a panel, you can see I have given the identities which are used. Correct? There is the standard integration cos raised to m theta multiplied by sine raised to n theta. When I integrate between 0 to pi, the standard integration is m upon m plus n, where m is a power of cos function and n is a power of sine function. So in our case, power of a cos function is 2, power of a sine function is 1. So it will be something like 2 by 3. So this 2 by 3, 2 pi, which comes from this 5 part of integration. So it will make totally 4 pi by 3, which I will take outside. And here in this r dependent part, this radial part, now you can see in this curly bracket, we have a 2 terms, r into a and half r square. So I can now split these 2 parts and I can form the 2 integration. So I do now all these calculations here in the last step. This all constant terms I write together outside. Some cancellations will also take place. And then this r dependent part I divide into 2 parts. Then I have the 2 r dependent integration. First, which goes from 0 to infinite, r raised to 4 e raised to minus 2r by a, and similarly another equation which contains r raised to 5 term and e raised to minus 2 r by a. And if I just look at the identity again, then there is a standard integration available in the literature. Whenever there is a one-dimensional integration x raised to n, where x goes from 0 to infinite, e raised to minus px dx, it can be answered as n factorial upon p raised to n plus 1, where n is nothing but the power of your variable x. If I compare these two equations, in the first, you can see this, there is a r raised to 4. So if I consider x as r, then this n will be 4 in the first equation. And here minus px means it is something like minus, this 2 by a will behave as a p. And so if I use this identity in the first expression, n factorial means here it will be 4 factorial upon 2 by a raised to 5. Similarly, for the second integration, it will be 5 factorial upon 2 by a raised to 6. So these are all standard integrations. So I can directly substitute the value of this integration, and then I simplify this equation. And don't forget, 4 factorial means something like 4 into 3 into 2 into 1, and 2 raised to 5 means it is 2 which multiplies by 5 times. So if I simplify everything, then I can calculate the ground state energy correction for the second order as 9 by 4 e square into a cube, where e is nothing but the strength of the electric field and intensity of the electric field, and small a is nothing but the Bohr radius. If I go back to our lower standard, then we also know that whenever any material is kept in a uniform electric field, what happens that the positive and negative charges will be now displaced from their respective positions. And because of that, now if the positive and negative charges are displaced, what happens? The physical phenomenon is known as a polarization. You can say that material gets polarized. So here also, when hydrogen atom is placed in a uniform electric field, then the polarization takes place, and this polarization energy is always written as a half alpha E square, where alpha by name is known as the polarizability. It is the polarization per unit volume. correct? So this half alpha E square is the polarization energy. But of course, this is true, this equation is true only when the applied electric field is small. And don't forget, the very basic concept of the perturbation theory is that the external agency, in the case of Stark effect, this external agency is the electric field, should be small. That is how we can do these calculations. Otherwise, whatever theory we have developed is not applicable. Your perturbation, the outside agency should be small. So obviously, in our case also, this applied electric field is small. And if it is small, then this polarization energy can be written as half alpha E square. So if I consider this correction to the energy, the ground state correction to the energy as a polarization energy, then this expression 9 by 4 E square A square can be compared with this half alpha E square term. What it gives me idea about the polarizability of hydrogen atom when placed in a uniform but small electric field. So this alpha I can calculate by comparing this equation as 9 by 2 EQ. And if I just go into the literature, if I just go to the some experimental observations, then whatever value I calculate using this theory as a 9 by 2 EQ, that exactly matches with the experimental observation. So whatever we have done mathematically, whatever we have done using the concepts of perturbation theory to calculate polarizability of hydrogen atom, and if I perform experiment and if I calculate the polarizability, both come same, they both are compared very nicely. That benchmark that actually validate your application of perturbation theory. So this is the, as I was mentioning, that there is a direct use of perturbation theory to compare the experimental observations. So this is what we can do. We have placed hydrogen atom in a external uniform electric field. First, we have calculated the first order correction to the ground state energy, but fortunately, it comes out to be zero. There is no first order correction to the ground state energy. Second order correction we can perform by following the Dalgarno-Lewis method, and that gives me the idea of polarizability, and that compares very nicely with the experiment. So that is again, you can say, a proof. It's a confirmation that the perturbation theory is valid, or it is applicable to calculate the physical quantity. Like here we have computed the polarizability for the hydrogen. I again repeat that this is not just limited to hydrogen atom, but all those atomic system which is like a hydrogen atom. And I think we have already studied in our first unit that it's not just this hydrogen atom. You may also call the helium ion, for example, where one of the electron is removed, then there is a central charge which is now having two protons. So only difference is that here in all these calculations where we have written Z equals to 1, only thing is that you replace in all these equations Z by 2. So difference comes only by this factor. Remaining thing will be all as it is. So Z is replaced by 2 for helium ion, and accordingly here, even in the expressions for this ground state correction energy to the helium ion atom will appear Z in it. So only difference is the presence of Z in that. It's not only helium ion. You can think of, say, the next, say, lithium, doubly ionized lithium, lithium plus 2. Then also you can have the similar consideration. Or as I was mentioning, you can talk about the Rydberg atoms. You can have, say, in a terrestrial thing where the density is very low, and you can find the system where the outermost electron is in the highly excited states, constituting a system which is more or less look like a hydrogen atom. Then for such a Rydberg atom, the same theory, same formalism, same mathematical derivation is applicable. But this is all about when the hydrogen atom or hydrogenic atom is placed in an external electric field, and you have computed the first order and then the second order correction to the energy to the ground state. In fact, ground state is the non-degenerate case. But if you go to the first excited states, then for the first excited states, it is degenerate states. So this theory, the direct theory, is not applicable, and you know that we have already obtained a theory pertaining to the degenerate case. So we have to now apply the theory of degenerate perturbation theory when you want to compute the correction to the energy states for first excited state or the second excited states or higher states for a hydrogen atom placed in a uniform electric field. So I go to the next topic, where still the title is the same. We are studying the Stark effect of a hydrogen atom system, but now not to the ground state, but we are considering the first excited states. And whenever you say the first excited states, obviously the three quantum numbers which are characterizing your state, principal quantum number n, orbital angular quantum number L, and the magnetic quantum number m, this will take now different value. For the ground state, it was n1, L0, and m0. But when you have a first excited states, principal quantum number will take value 2, and because of this 2, now your L will take now two possible values. It can take 0 value or it can take 1 value. And if L is 0, then corresponding to L0, M will obviously 0. But for L equals to 1, you have now three values of M. Don't forget, whenever you have a L values, then corresponding to this each L values, you have twice L plus 1 number of M values, minus L to plus L. So the corresponding to L equals to 1, now M, the magnetic quantum number, will have three different choices, minus 1, 0, and plus 1. So what we can have, now we can have a two group of quantum numbers. One which I try to write in a say, balloon 200, that is written in a blue balloon, and another combination which I can think I have written in this red part. Right? So my state function can have now four possibilities. Let us write my state function U200. Don't forget this first quantum number represents your principal quantum number. Second quantum number is the value of L, and third quantum number represents M value. So I can have now first choice, as I've said, the blue part, that is 200. So one possible combination of this quantum number is U200. So I have a first excited states which is written as a U200, and that also I can divide into two parts, one which I call as a radial part and another is the angular dependent part, that is theta phi part. And in the theory of hydrogen atom, we have already discussed that this angular part, this theta phi dependent part, is represented by the spherical harmonics. And this spherical harmonics we write with a symbol Y. So for the first choice, this R N L, that is 20, and for Y we write Y LM theta phi. So L is 0 and M is 0. So my first choice, which I write here in the blue part, is U200, which I can write as a product of radial part R and the spherical harmonic, that is theta phi dependent parts Y. But just to write it in a small, I write as M1. So this M1, 1 indicates it's the composite or say the common quantum number to represents N equals to 2, L equals to 0, and M equals to 0. So this 1 here, it is written for all these three combinations. But just to make the notations smaller, I write this U200 as M1. Now for the other combination, the red part where N is 2, L is 1, but now M can take three choices, -1, 0, and 1. So now next three combinations which I am writing, where N is 2, L is 1, M is -1, M is 0, and M is 1. So we have now these three combinations, 2, 1, -1, 2, 1, 0, and 2, 1, 1, which I will write as M2, M3, and M4. Right? And of course, this is a degenerate case because you can say that everything is a first excited states, but there are four such states which we can construct. And when I use now my unperturbed Hamiltonian H0 to operate on U200, U21 -1, or U210, or U211, all of them will give me the same energy. So I have also written here below what is the energy of the first excited state. First excited state means whenever your n value is 2. So for n equals to 2, my energy will be same for all these 4 states. And value wise, it is minus e square by 8. And you know that all those states, 4 states giving the same energy. So the degeneracy involved in the first excited state is 4. There are 4 states giving the same energy. So it is a 4-fold degenerate state. Instead of that, n equals to 2, if I talk about the second excited state, and for second excited state, n equals to 3, then we can compute similarly the other combinations, and you can find the degeneracy will be 9. It is a 9-fold degenerate state. So I can now make a judgment that whenever you want to compute the degeneracy for such a electric dipole interaction with the electric field, then this degeneracy can be computed by n square value. For the ground state, n square is 1 and therefore there is no degeneracy. It is the non-degenerate case. For the case of first excited state where n is 2, so you can see there are 4 states giving the same energy. So it is a 4-fold degenerate states. Similarly, if you go to the second excited states, n equals to 3, then the degeneracy will be 9-fold. So what it says that you are, when you are considering the first excited state, then it is the degeneracy that has to be taken care. It is a 4-fold degenerate state, and therefore, whenever you want to calculate the correction to the first excited states up to first order, we have to solve such a kind of determinant. I hope you have not forgotten that in the case of degenerate perturbation theory, eventually we need to solve such a R cross R determinant. If R-fold degeneracy is there, then you have to solve such a R-fold degenerate determinant. So same thing is now happening here. Only difference is that instead of R-fold, now we have a 4-fold. So we will be solving such a 4/4 determinant. This term in the earlier notation we have written as small h11, correct? So it is small h11 minus the first order correction to the first excited state, and then this is something like 1 2. So I can say this is the h12, this is the h13, this is the h14. The second row, it is something like h21, this is your h22 minus, and so on and so on. So ultimately this is what I have to compute, where this h dash, that is the perturbation, is still given by the same expression. It is the external electric field which now interacts with the electric dipole of hydrogen atom. So I have the same expression for the perturbation minus R E cos theta. And again you can see the total parity of this h dash function is odd, because cos theta is a odd is an even function, but there is a presence of r raised to 1. So if you change the sign of r, your h dash will also change the sign. So your totally h dash is having an odd parity. So whenever you obtain such a matrix element, whenever you obtain such a integration m1 h dash m1, where h dash is having the odd parity, then what selection rule you have to follow, what mathematical condition that you have to follow, so that the matrix elements will be either 0 or will not be 0. In the case of this interaction of electric field with the electric dipole, so whenever there is an electric dipole interaction, then this selection rules are to be followed. Whenever you calculate the matrix element, something like m1 h dash m1, or here something like m2 h dash m3, while evaluating such matrix elements due to dipole interaction, then the change in the L value should not be 0. So if you are going from say L equals to 1 to L dash equals to 1, change in L is 0 because L and L dash are same, then such a transition will contribute to 0. Question comes, what this L and L dash are? If I go back to my expression for this M1. Basically, M1 means it is N2, L0, and M0. For example, M3, this M3 will be N2, L1, and M0. So if now you are calculating the matrix element between this U200 and U210, between M1 and M2, then you can see your L is going from 0 to 1. So it is allowed. But for example, if you go for M2 and M3, if you go for M2 where it is U21 minus 1 and M3 means it is U210. So between this two, M2 and M3, L value is same. So if I calculate the matrix elements between, let us say, M2 and M2, you can see 2, 2. So L will be same here and L will be same here. Then the change in L will be 0. Such a matrix element will contribute 0. So those matrix elements where there is no change in L are always 0. But those matrix element where the matrix elements with a different L, but not large difference, only the difference of 1, either plus 1, 1 more or 1 less, those matrix elements are not 0. Similarly, for those matrix element where the change in M value is equals to 0, here it is not equals to 0, here it is equals to 0, they are all they are permissible, they are non-zero. Otherwise, whenever there is a change in M, when M is not equals to M dash, they are all 0. So looking to this selection rule, looking to this mathematical conditions, then out of this 16 elements, first 4 by 4, so there are 16 elements, you can find their majority of the elements are 0. You can see there are many zeros now appearing. In fact, only two matrix elements are to be computed, M1 H dash M3 and this M3 H dash M. But we can see further that this M3 H dash M1 if I call as H31 and this M1 H dash M3 if I call as H13, they are symmetric. They are same, and therefore actually you are calculating only one element, that is H13, or you can call it as H1. So what happens that out of this 16 elements, now you are calculating only one matrix element, and don't forget this matrix element means you are calculating only one time integration. Right? So only one integration that I have to compute here. So in the next, obviously, I will now compute that integration, but before that, I should also be requiring what is the exact equation for this U200, U21 minus 1, and so on and so forth. So which I can go from the any quantum mechanical book and I just see what are the expressions, what is the mathematical form available. You can see this U200 will be written like this. This first factor is your normalization constant, 1 upon 32 pi a cube raised to half. Then there is a term like this. Right? So this is my U200 expression. Similarly, I can write the expression for U21 minus 1, U210, U211. What is to be remembered here, just of course, this type of things will be given to you even when asked in the examination, because there is no need to claim it. You will be definitely given, but just for similarity, I am just mentioning that there is a same normalization constant everywhere. You can see this 1 upon 32 pi a cube raised to half, that is everywhere. This exponential function e raised to minus r upon 2a, that is everywhere. So these are the common thing. Only difference is that in the first expression where L is 0 and M is 0, you have a 2 minus r upon a. Whereas in all remaining three equations where your L is 1, you can see the middle quantum number, it is 1, 1, 1, which I have marked with a red line. There, this r upon a is common. You can see everywhere it is r upon a common. There is another interesting aspect that you can also look at to this expression, that whenever there is a L other than 0, in the first expression L was 0. So there is no theta dependency. There is nothing like cos theta or sin theta. Whenever there is a L dependency, when L is non-zero, 1, 2, 3 like that, then you always come across the theta dependency. You can see in the second equation there is sine theta. You can see in the third expression there is a cos theta. You can see there is a sine theta in it. So whenever L is not 1, you always accompanied by a trigonometric function. Similarly, if you have M, the magnetic quantum number other than 0, you can see in the third expression where M is 0, there is no phi dependency. The azimuthal angle is not present in the third expression. But whenever your M value, magnetic quantum number, is other than 0, like in the second it is -1, while in the fourth equation it is +1, you can see there is a exponential term containing this azimuthal angle. So e raised to 5 type of term will be present whenever your M value, magnetic quantum number, is other than 0. But anyway, this is the first excited state functions for hydrogen atom for different quantum numbers 200, 211, 21 minus 1, 210, and so on and so forth. Out of that, we want to compute the matrix element, non-zero matrix element like M1 H dash M3, or you can say it is M3 H dash M1. So I am now computing this H31 factor. Of course, both this M3 and M1 contains this normalization constant with power half. So when they multiply together, the power half will go away. Correct? So I substitute all this information again. No need to say this M1 is nothing but your this U200. So this is the expression for U200. H this is again written as minus ER capital E cos theta, and this is the part which comes from your this M3. So M3 is written, there is a cos theta factor from the H dash, there is a cos theta factor from this M3 expression, there is a sin theta d theta because of the volume element. You are again computing this in a spherical harmonic coordinates, and you can see in both in this third M3 and in M1 there is no phi dependency, so this d phi will again contribute 2 pi when I integrate between 0 and 2 pi. This cos square theta multiplied by sin theta d theta when integrated between 0 to pi. Likewise, what we have done previously, we get 2 by 3, and all R dependent part I'm writing together. So it is a more or less same calculations, same type of calculations. When I do, I get like this. This 2 pi comes from the phi integration. This 2 by 3 comes because of the theta integration. And of course, now I have this equation, only R dependent equation, where again, this I open up this bracket, so I have now two integration, one with this factor 2 and another with respect to factor R by A. And you know that this R is to 4 and whatever R comes from this, again I use this identity, and if I put all this value here and if I simplify, which I leave it to you, it's just the substitution of this identity in this equation, and you open up this bracket, you make it this 2 term and calculate. Finally, what you get, this value H13, the matrix element, this H13 as PE capital EA. So my determinant will look like this. All this W1, the first order correction will be as it is, but this H13 or H31, that I will replace as PE epsilon. So my 4 cross 4 determinant will look like this. And obviously this is 0. So I have to now open up the determinant. I have to calculate this determinant, and something what you do for the 3 cross 3 determinant, same thing I can do for this 4 cross 4 determinant. For example, first I will calculate this first element multiplies to this inner determinant. You can see this determinant can also be thought of made up of say inner determinant. So this first value, the first element of this 4 cross 4 determinant, that will be now multiplied to the value of this determinant, which I try to show with the dashed line. So, and similarly, I can do with the second element, third element, and fourth element. So there are 4 such terms that I can write. This is my first term, which I have written, which I have shown here. The first element when multiplies to this determinant, that I try to show here. Right? Second element, it is for this part, but fortunately this is 0. So 0 into first 3 here and last this 2 rows, that makes the part of this 0, this second element, but since it is multiplied to 0, so there is no need to write it. I go with the third. This third means this first two columns and the last column that constitute the elements of this determinant. So I have to open up now 4 cross 4 determinant like this, and of course this everything is equals to 0. And here you know this 3 cross 3 determinant how to open. This multiplied by this minus this multiplied by this. So this is how you open up this bracket. You simplify it. What you get is this whole square multiplied by this curly bracket equals to 0. And obviously, if two terms are multiplying and giving you 0, two possibility, either this first term can be 0, then you can say 0 multiplied by anything is 0, or second possibility is that your curly bracket itself is 0. So there are, with this two possibilities, that W1 first order for a first excited state, that itself is 0, or you have this curly bracket equals to 0. And from that, whenever I simplify it, because if curly bracket is 0 means this term equals to this term, whole square are same. So if I take the square root, you can have now two possibilities with plus and minus for 3EA, and another possibility, if the first bracket is 0, then W1 FS will be 0. So now you have actually three possibilities. Either the first order correction to the first excited state, that is 0, which I have written as a possibility A, and second possibility is that plus or minus it can be 3EE even. To do further calculation, now I assume, let us say, out of this possibility B, I am considering the solution with a positive sign. So I assume as a first case, my W1, the first order correction to say first excited state, as a plus 3EA. And using this possibility, now I try to write now expression for the first expression to the state function expanded in terms of this basis. Correct? Here alpha goes as 1, 2, 3, 4, something like what we have as M1, M2, M3, 4. Here this M1 or alpha 1 means it is the possibility 2, 0, 0. When alpha is 2 means it is 2, 1, minus 1. When alpha is 3, it is 2, 1, 0, and so on and so forth. And we have already discussed what is the condition which we impose on this coefficient alpha, that the total square of sum of this A alpha, the coefficient, should be 1. The total probability should be 1. It is, in fact, as we have already discussed, is the weight factor for the each E, U, and alpha, where N means, in our case, it is 2, and alpha means it is 1, 2, 3, 4, like that. Right? So with this W1 as a possibility, with this idea about our state function, we can now write our equation for this. But now what I do, I can just write slightly differently. You can see in this determinant 4 cross 4, can I take all those diagonal elements and I write separately? So what I do, I write a trick like this. This A1, A2, A3, A4 comes from this part. A alpha means alpha is 1, 2, 3, 4. And then those diagonal elements which I write separately. And in that also you can this minus 3, because you can see this W1 is coming with the minus sign. Minus, 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 minus. So even if I take W1 itself as a plus value, but because of that minus sign, I have now minus 3E common, and you can have this. If you add this, you will get the previous equation. Only idea is that I can write this in this fashion, and on the right hand side, since it is 0, means it is this 4 cross 4 determinant 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, like that. And then I can write like this. Then this term I take on the other side. And if I open up the this determinant, 0 into first element plus 0 into the second element plus 3EA into A3 plus 0, that will give me the first element here. And similarly, I take this everything on right hand side, and if I open up, then I have now this last equation. And then you compare 1 to 1, element to element. First element equals to first element on right hand side, second element and second element on both sides, third element with third element. You can see this the first element when I compare, you can say that A1 equals to A3. Same is there. If you compare the third element, you can prove that A1 equals to A3. Whereas A2 is 0 and A4 is also 0. So my conclusion is that I have same value of A1 and A2, A1 and A3, whereas A2 and A4 are 0. So this normalization condition, A1 square plus A2 square plus A3 square plus A4 square equals to 1, if I use this idea that what is A1 square plus A2 square plus A3 square plus A4 square, you can see A1 and A3 are same. So you obtain the value of A1 and A3 that comes out to be 1 by root 2. So using this A1 and A3, A2 and A4 are 0. Now if I try to write my state function V0, so if A1 and A3 contributes, if A1 alpha is 1, so it is 200, and A3, so if alpha is 3, so it is 210 state function that will be forming your V0. Right? So for this particular choice of W1 as plus 3EEA, if I write now state function, it is the combination, linear combination of this 200 and 2100. So that is what I have written. My V0 will be written as 1 by root 2 because A1 and A3 are same. I can write commonly. So my state function will be written as a 1 by root 2 U200 plus U210. Right? This 1 by root 2, now you can say it is nothing but the normalization constant. This is when I have taken the one of the possibility of the W1 for first order. I have taken this as the plus 3EEA, but if you take the minus sign, other solution, and if I do this procedure, then I can prove in that case your A1 and A3 are equal but opposite in sign. A1 will be minus A3. So in that case, you can have this possibility for the state function. So I'm able to calculate the second order, I'm able to calculate the first order correction to energy for the first excited state. This W1 is also computed, and I have also computed what is the state function V0. Now, what is the role of this? What happens once you calculate it? What is the physics that we can dig out from this mathematical analysis? So for that, now I'm writing the energy of the first excited state, but after adding the correction. So total energy of the first excited states after adding correction, if I call as E2 dash, then original energy due to the unperturbed state, which we have already said it is minus E square by 8A. In that, now I will be adding now first order correction. So I will be adding now this first order correction which I have obtained here. It can be either 0 or it can have this plus or minus value. So if I add 0 to it, to this E2, the unperturbed part, if I add 0, it will remain same. So that is what I have shown pictorially in the below graph. This E2 remains same when I add this W1 as 0. If I add positive value, then from this negative value, when you add something positive, so it will be less negative, so it will be lifted up. So when I use this W1 as a positive solution, then compared to E2, now E2 dash, that is the correction, is above, it is raised, it is increased. Whereas if I add minus value, that is minus 3EEA, then it will be further lower. Instead of E2, you can see E2 dash is now lower. So what happens, this E2, which was made up of the four state, E2 has a contribution from U200, it has a contribution from U210, it has a contribution from U211, it has a contribution from U21 minus 1. So this E2, which was actually a four-fold degenerate state, but after adding this correction, it is now no longer four-fold degenerate. But you can see now there are three separate energy states. So you can say that your degeneracy is removed. Of course, it is not completely removed because still this state, the central state, which has the 0, it is still doubly degenerate because there are two zeros, plus 0 and minus 0, something like that. So you can say that your four-fold degenerate states are now split into three different states. So if, of course, not all four states are separated, but the tendency of of perturbation is to remove this degeneracy. So your degeneracy is removed, and you can have now three separate energy states. Putting in the language of spectroscopy, now you have a finer view, you have a finer details. Earlier, before the application of perturbation, the states were looking like a same, only one state. But now you can see when you apply the perturbation, when you apply the external electric field, instead of one single state for all four, now you have a three different energy states. So we can say that now you get a more finer details about the energy states or the energy values. This is what we call as the fine structure of the energy states. So this is known as a fine structure. In the language of spectroscopy, you get the finer detail, fine structure spectra of the hydrogen energy states. For mathematics point of view, if I just go back to the expression for the H dash, it is written as PE cos theta. And you know that whenever you have the value cos theta, which is positive, that means your E and P are parallel, because you can see this PE is P is can be written as something like A, because the separation between the electron and the nucleus in the hydrogen atom is exactly the Bohr radius. So this equation, the last equation, you can see it is contributing the positive answer. Positive means your cos theta gives you the positive value. It is known as a parallel situation. Your electric field and the dipole moment are parallel. Whereas here in the top where it is positive, so minus and minus can make it plus. So this cos theta must be pi. Pi means it is anti-parallel. So this situation indicates that electric field and the electric dipole of the hydrogen atom, they are anti-parallel. One is, let us say, from left to right, then other is in the right to left direction. Whereas when the electric dipole and the external electric field are mutually perpendicular, cos pi by 2 is 0. So there is no perturbation, there is no contribution from this H dash term. So you get this. So this situation indicates that your electric field and the electric dipole are mutually perpendicular. So this is how you can compute even the first excited state energies when corrected to the first order correction by applying electric field. What is common feature that we observed is that it's not just the energy levels are shifting or raising above or below. So it's not just shifting is taking place, but along with the shifting, the splitting is also taking place. And splitting means you can say that degeneracy is removed. So this is what we call as the linear Stark effect, or where the electric field is not very large. So polarizability is directly proportional to electric field. But if your electric field is large compared to, say, some value, then it is possible that polarizability may also depend on the square of electric field. Such a square dependence of polarizability on applied electric field indicates that it is not linear, because the power is more than one. So it is a non-linear effect. And that happens when you incident the electric field, you apply the electric field, let us say through very intense laser beam, where laser beam produces very strong electric field, and your polarizability may not be linear function of electric field. But that is not in the purview of this perturbation theory, because this entire discussion, entire theory is developed keeping in mind that the external field, here electric field, is small in magnitude. It is not a very intense. This is known as a Stark effect. Okay, is that the only application that one can study using the perturbation theory, or is there anything else also you can study? Yes, and answer is you can study such a similar problems where any external agency, if small compared to the actual Hamiltonian, unperturbed Hamiltonian, then this theory is valid. So I go to the next slide where I try to mention, just briefly, I try to touch upon that other applications of perturbation theory. But before that, let me also calculate. In fact, I just forget to mention that if you have this energy states available, then how one can calculate the eigenvectors, right? Calculating eigenvectors means you should know this coefficient A1, A2, A3, and A4. Right? So if you have this A1, A3, which we have just calculated for the case of this positive correction to the energy, then we have already calculated this A1 and A3, which are common 1 by root 2, whereas A2 and A4 are 0. So if I form the corresponding eigenvector, then it will be 1 by root 2, 0, 1 by root 2, 0. If I go back to this expression is nothing but your vector A, eigenvector, correct? So this is your eigenvector. You know that the vector can also be written in a column matrix. So this is what we can calculate for the case when W1 is plus 3 EA. If you have it with a minus, then A1 and A3 are equal, but with opposite sign. So accordingly, your eigenvector will have the components like this. If your W1 Fs, that is the third possibility, if 0, then A3, A4 are all 0. E2 will be 1, so you have this possibility. Correct? So the state function, when I say A2 is 1, remaining all are 0. And don't forget again, A2, 2 means whenever you have, say, alpha, A2 is 1, so alpha is 2, then your state function 2, 1, minus 1 contributes. So this possibility is corresponding to a state U2, 1, minus 1. If you have another 0, because it can be plus 0, minus 0, so it will be A1, A3, A2, 0, but A4 is 1. In that case, the eigenvector will be 0, 0, 0, and 1, so on and so forth. So you can even compute the eigenvectors for this hydrogenic system when exposed to the external electric field. Lastly, as I was mentioning, we can see such various applications of this perturbation theory. It's not that only the hydrogenic atom is placed in a uniform electric field. You can place any quantum mechanical system in, say, uniform magnetic field also. So in that case, your perturbation part will be written like this. Mu B is the Bohr magnetron. H cut is, of course, Planck's constant divided by H. B is the applied external magnetic field. L is the orbital angular quantum number. Here in this first case, I am not including the effect of spin. So I exclude whatever is the role played by the spin. If I don't include, then I get the same kind of situation. For a ground state, there is no correction. You can see both the states after correction means with a prime symbol, this all are at the same level. But if you calculate the first excited state, again you can see it is now split into 3 components. One is with a higher value, one is with a lower value, and there are 2 states which are with the same value. So still this middle state is appearing as a doubly degenerate state. So philosophy is same, mathematics is same, everything is same. Only thing is that now instead of electric field, your quantum mechanical system is exposed to by say external magnetic field. It is same thing. But when I include the spin in it, it's not only the orbital angular quantum number, but even include the spin of electron. Let us say I put my hydrogen atom in external magnetic field. And you know that the electron spin is also playing a role. So if I write now total angular momentum, not just L, but L plus S, then you have to also consider that how this L, the orbital angular quantum number, and the spin quantum number of, say, electron, they get coupled. And you know that there is a famous word, famous phrase, known as the LS coupling. So now you have to think of that interaction also, that if L and S, they couple means when they interact, that L dot S term, that LS coupling, that one has to interact. Not only this, we will learn in, say, our third semester, when you talk about relativistic quantum mechanics, that even for a hydrogen atom type of system where electron is very close to the nucleus, then the speed of electron, when I calculate, it is very large. It is only about 100 times smaller than the speed of light in vacuum. And you know that the speed of light in vacuum is about 3 raised to 8 meter per second. Then this 10 raised to 8 meter per second, compared to that, the speed of electron is only 10 raised to 6. So it is not very small. And if it is very is comparable to the speed of light, then you have to include the relativistic correction also. So if I include now relativistic correction to the kinetic energy of this revolving electron around the nucleus, then corresponding interaction energy can also be written as a perturbation, because its contribution will be small, but there it is not negligible. And therefore, now whatever correction due to relativity for this revolving electron, if I add, I have now expression for this H dash, the kinetic energy correction due to relativistic part, that I can include. So now I can just go on adding the different small interactions into my description. Whatever interactions you can think, whatever physics is allowing you to include those interactions, and if that interaction is not large compared to the unperturbed Hamiltonian, that this small interactions, if I just go on adding as a perturbation, then following same simple mathematics, I can now actually find the detailed energy spectra, detailed energy levels of a hydrogenic system. Just what I have shown here is the summary of all this thing. This left side, where I have written, say, n equals to 1, L equals to 0, this left horizontal lines are the three states which are without any perturbation. Correct? Where quantum numbers are also written, we know that for the ground state, when n equals to 1, L and M both are 0. Now I'm also including the spin of the electron, which is half. H cut I'm not writing, I assume H cut as 1. So this is my ground state energy. Similarly, above that, I have another energy level corresponding to n equals to 2. Of course, when n is 2, L have now two possibilities, L is 0 and L can have 1 also. Correspondingly, M will have different choices. S is still half. This is the second excited stage. And what is observed, that when this all states are applied with this type of perturbation, I correct my energy due to the relativistic part. This first perturbation, if I include the LS coupling, angular orbital motion, and the spin of a electron, if they get couples, then using that as a perturbation, when I use all this perturbation, what interestingly I find, that compared to my original unperturbed energy levels, now after applying this perturbation, you can see the different energy levels, they are not only shifted, they are not lowered, but they are also splitted. In the ground state, there is no splitting possible because it is a non-degenerate case. But for the first excited state, you can see it is now splitted into two components. Correct? This is not a Stark effect, mind well. This is not the perturbation due to the electric field. This is the perturbation due to the relativistic correction. This is the perturbation due to the coupling of orbital angular momentum and spin. So obviously the nature will be different. Splitting is observed, shifting is observed, but now there is only two states corresponding to this n equals to 2. For n equals to 3, there are three states. And if I use now spectroscopic notation to denote all these states, right? This state, if I want to denote, where whenever n value you are writing, that value will be written as a prefactor, as a numeral. You can see this 1 which I have written here before 1s2, that 1 indicates that it is the ground state or the n equals to 1. Whenever I write 2s or 2p, that 2 indicates that the value of n principal quantum number is 2. So this 1, 2 or 3, that indicates the value of principal quantum number n. This SPDF symbols corresponds to the value of L. This value of angular quantum number L is always denoted by the alphabets S, P, D, F, G, and so on and so forth. S corresponds to the value when L is 0. P is corresponding to L equals to 1. D corresponds to L equals to 2, so on and so forth. Whereas at the subscript, at the foot of this L value, S, P, D, F, whatever I have written as half or 3 by 2 or 5 by 2, they actually indicate the value of total angular quantum number, which is the vector sum of the orbital part and the spin part. So this last numbers, fractional number, indicates the value of J. So the ground state is written like this, 1 as half. What you understand from this, N is 1, J is half, and L is 0. Similarly, if I go to this energy state, the lowest energy states of the first excited state, it is made up of now two states. It is still doubly degenerate states, 2s half and 2p half. You can see this 2 indicates it's a first excited state. Half indicates that the j value is half, but here for 2s half, value of L is 0, where for 2p half, value of L is 1. So this state is still made up of the two states, and therefore we call it as a doubly degenerate states. Similarly, higher order states are also there, which are doubly degenerate. Right? So we can see that splitting is happening, degeneracy is removed, but not fully. Still, you are left with some of the states which are different, but energy point of view they are same. Like what I have mentioned here, that 2s half and 2p half states are different because values of L are different, but still energy point of view they are same, so they are doubly degenerate states. Then question comes, how to remove such a degeneracy? Still this degeneracy is there, which I want to remove. How I can further in detail study this fine structure or fine spectra. And then very famous experiment performed by Lamb that actually tells you that even these two states are also energetically different, and therefore you are allowed to split this state further. Something which is finer than fine is known as a hyperfine. So if I apply this Lamb shift experiment to investigate the two different energy states corresponding to 2s half and 2p half, then you are getting even further in detail information about these two states. And something which is more than fine, we call it as a hyperfine. So you can get now even this state is also divided into two states. If I draw further third line, third column, then this state will be now divided into two different states. Such a spectra, such energy spectra are known as the hyperfine energy spectra. Idea is same. You just go on adding the smaller perturbation so that you can split, you can divide the energy spectra into their components. You remove the degeneracy and you get the in detail finer or even hyperfine detailed information. Correct? So this is the basic application of, say, the perturbation theory, directly useful for spectroscopic understanding. Here, just to add the notation, all those energy states which are compared, where shifting by what amount the energy states are lowering or raising, that I try to write in a unit 1 centimeter inverse. Right? So let us say for the ground state, the compared to the original energy states, now after applying the perturbation, you can see that there is a shifting, downward shifting of the energy states by 1.46 centimeter inverse. So this centimeter inverse is equivalent to the electron volt of energy, that is what you call say the uh, milli electron volt of energy. 1 centimeter inverse is about 0.12398. So basically this much amount of electron volt of energy is now lower. Right? So this is the spectroscopic notation. Spectroscopic people, they usually write the shifting of energy state in terms of centimeter inverse or in terms of wave numbers. So that is why I have introduced this conversion, that since I have used the spectroscopic notation, so everywhere you can see I have written centimeter inverse, but it is equivalent to the energy. Right? So this is the conversion you can see. So idea is very beautiful. This is a very interesting perturbation theory, and as I've said, it is very much useful to understand the fine structure of the atomic and molecular spectra. And if you go further to apply further external agency as a perturbation, then you can go even to the hyperfine structure of the energy spectra. So entire spectroscopy can be studied. Of course, not the laser spectroscopy, because the laser being very powerful cannot be used in this theory, where perturbation theory demands that external external agency should be a small thing. So otherwise, you can understand the very fundamentals of the spectroscopy. So there is a direct application of this perturbation theory to the spectroscopy that I try to convey. So with this remark, I just stop for the stationary perturbation theory. Next time we will consider the time-dependent perturbation theory, and then we see that how additional information we can gain for applying the time-dependent perturbation theory. Correct. So that's the part we will take next. So I think this is I stop here for this presentation.